All right, hello friends of the internet. It's your man, the Cozy Representative. I'm back, and today I wanted to talk about the year 2009. Why is that, you ask? Why 2009? Well, I've been thinking about this year quite a bit lately and where we were at exactly in pop culture on the musical side of things. Because, you know, the 2000s, when you look back at the decade, it was a very unserious decade. It was not PC at all. You know, it was just crazy drama, tabloid fixtures, and like transgressive art, purposefully offensive shock value humor that could be found on Eminem CDs or on shows like Family Guy. And you know, on the musical side of things, I feel like it reflected this. It was a very unserious, if you know, because we're coming out of the 90s, right? Where that was a decade of serious, dark, you know, music, Nirvana and the Smashing Pumpkins and like fucking REM and, you know, Alanis Morissette and these artists who were very, I feel like the 90s was a more dark, serious decade when it came to music, but in the 2000s, if you, you know, we're kind of riding in on like the boy band era, right? And as you go down the years of the 2000s, every year music gets a little bit more and a little bit more ridiculous each year. Rock music was like on the way out, you know, and it was becoming increasingly just like goofy dance pop music, essentially. And it got goofier and goofier each year, campier and campier, until 2009 rolls around, and like looking back on it, we have, you know, a year of some really great music that I want to talk about, but also just, it's a fascinating year to me because the vibe had gotten so goofy and unserious at that point that it's just an interesting time to look back on. People were really not giving a fuck. In 2009, I kind of missed that. I feel like here in the early 2020s where we're at now, I feel like the vibe of not giving a fuck is kind of coming back, but in some ways I feel like it's you know, it can be a little bit contrived compared to like the specific place we were at in '09. So basically I don't know, I kind of wanted to take us on a little journey, a little retrospective, if you will, of where we were at in pop culture musically at the time. So the other night, I went on Wikipedia because I was like, I kind of want to make a video that's like a pop culture retrospective of 2009. So went on Wikipedia, I went to an article called 2009 in Music. And I basically went through and I compiled a list of albums and songs that I felt like were definitive of the vibe of 2009, how I remember it, because I was in 7th and 8th grade in 2009. So I was in middle school. It's kind of the, you know, half of the list is like personal to me of like what I remember being the vibe of that time and what kind of brings out nostalgia for me. But the other half of the list, not like exactly 50-50, but like the vibe spectrum that we're going here. The other half of the spectrum of the vibe is like definitive music for that year that I, you know, feel like is interesting to look back on. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I made a list and we're going to go through this and just kind of, just a little retrospective. You know, take a trip down memory lane, but also try to unpack, you know, this year in music a little bit. I thought it would be interesting. Is there anything more that I want to say for the intro? I don't really think so. I don't know how many music clips, like clips of songs I'm going to be able to play in this video, because a lot of these big chart toppers, you can't fucking put them in a YouTube video because they're like, nah, bro, that's copyrighted as fuck. So I don't know. There might be some non-music in here. There might be some music in here. We're going to see where it goes. So before we launch into this, real quick, I have to do a little self-promo shilling real quick. I'm sorry about that, but if you want to support this channel, if you like what you're seeing, and you want to see more of this, you can join these people on the screen in supporting me over on Patreon, and you can support me, and it will be awesome. The other thing I wanted to say, I was featured on a podcast recently, the Brutality podcast. It's like a metal, like a deathcore podcast, which is kind of funny because that's not really my thing. But or not that I dislike that kind of music, but I just don't, I kind of cover different stuff. But I was on a metal podcast called the Brutality Podcast. We had a great chat. It was like really long. I got into a bunch of stuff. We talked about YouTube and Warped Tour and the YouTube game and my story and all that. It was really cool. I'm going to put a link in the description to where you can watch or stream that, because it's a really good podcast by some new buddies of mine who I like a lot. And with that out of the way, it's time for a little pop culture musical retrospective of 2009. Let's get into it, my friends. All right, so the first one that I have on my little list here is, in no particular order, by the way, Weezer's Ratitude, which, if there's no, there is no better, brief summonation, you know what I'm saying? There's no better representation of where we were at culturally, musically, than this album, I would say. We were watching Rivers Cuomo from Weezer have a midlife crisis in real time. Monday to Sunday, I hit all the clubs. Not to dunk on the guy, I love Rivers Cuomo. We all go through things, and Rivers Cuomo is a strange, he can be a strange little guy. We know this. Ratitude was the first, the goofification of Weezer had been happening steadily over the course of the 2000s, with tracks like Beverly Hills, which is almost like just a goofball, like Weezer, almost like rap rock, not like nu metal, but like, fun in the sun kind of song. Ratitude, we really see. So the funny thing about this album is that I think it's literally like Rivers Cuomo's kind of unironic attempt, like genuine attempt at staying relevant with the times. One of the singles from it is the song Can't Stop Partying, featuring Lil Wayne, which is literally a Weezer, dance, like almost like a pop rap track. And on goofy Weezer tracks of the past, because even some of their classic stuff like Buddy Holly is like kind of silly, there was always this self-awareness that they had where, it was like, we're doing something goofy, even on Beverly Hills or like Troublemaker on the Red Album in 2008. They've never been afraid to get silly, but this is the first time that there's not that self-awareness behind it, where it's like, oh, this is like a genuine attempt, like this is out of touch for this band, there's not as much of a clear smile and a wink with this one. It's like a straight up, I don't know. And I think at the time, Rivers and at least some other people on the Weezer team thought this was going to be a genuinely like successful, I don't know if rebrand is the term, but like an actual crossover hit where Weezer, is dipping their toes in the rap game and in the actual pop game, not just the like pop rock game. But that did not happen at all. Can't Stop Partying and Ratitude as a whole, fans at the time were just genuinely confused and like, what is happening here? It was jarring and bizarre, and actually kind of made a lot of people like mad. Like, what the fuck is this band that I used to love doing? But honestly, I like Ratitude. I think it's fun. I knew it was goofy when it came out, but again, I was in literally like 7th, 8th grade at the time, and it's a fun album. You know what I mean? So in some ways, in some odd ways, I think Rivers actually maybe succeeded at creating an unironic, like relevant album at the time, because as a middle schooler, I actually enjoyed it. You know what I mean? I didn't have the jadedness that some older fans had, even though I was still aware that, like, yeah, this is a very goofy Weezer album. But of course, this album came out in 2009. This is a good starting point for the vibe in which we were at the time. So the next one on my list is Relapse by Eminem. Eminem had, stepped away from the spotlight for a few years. Eminem and Slim Shady really dominated the early 2000s, right? Like, and a lot of those old classic Eminem albums, I would say at this point in time, I wouldn't exactly call them timeless, They are a bit dated in that, like, I think the whole Eminem explosion was very much a you had to be there kind of thing. It was very like specific to the culture at the time, and it can look a little bizarre, you know, now, like 20, 25 years later. But after, you know, Eminem dropped, like, you know, what are considered his classics, you know, Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP, The Eminem Show, in 2004, kind of the last album of his real classical period, Encore, was just a mess, just a weird, bad album. And, you know, he was, you know, going through a pretty big drug addiction at the time, and, you know, after having spent several years kind of in the spotlight dealing with, you know, fame and basically being the biggest rapper in the world, essentially, you know, he kind of started losing his mind a little bit on Encore, and he did, you know, definitely what he should have done and stepped away for a bit, got sober, remarried Kim, and then they got divorced after like 4 months. That was a whole thing that happened, and he resurfaced in '09 with, guess what, a very goofy album called Relapse. This album, look, I'm not a very like huge Eminem kind of guy, like in general. Like I find his lore and his career and what he represents and everything interesting. Either way, this album, Relapse, it's kind of like what happens when a lot of artists go away for a little bit and then come back. He's kind of dusted himself off a little bit, you know, putting some WD-40 on the screws, you know what I mean? Kind of basically what I'm saying is getting back to basics a little bit. And he put out Relapse, which is like a goofy horrorcore, you know, nod to the Slim Shady LP days and the Marshall Mathers LP days. He's going kind of back to the start. You know, this album got kind of a lukewarm, a little bit of a negative reaction at the time, because you could say that even though he was going back to his roots, you could say they're a little bit contrived. You know, at this point, it's like, you know, we've heard this before. You're not in the same place that you were in 1999, whatever. But I think Relapse is another album that, looking back on it now, is actually like, it seems a lot better than it was at the time. I'm personally a fan of this album a lot more than I'm a fan of like stuff he, you know, would go on to drop after. This is not the album with Not Afraid on it. That album was after, you know. Looking back though, you know, I put this album on this list because it's, you know, whether Eminem planned for it or not, it really fits in with the vibe of 2009 of just kind of like off-the-wall goofiness. This album is incredibly goofy. Eminem and a lot of his fans have criticized this album as, you know, he raps in like accents throughout the whole thing, which is something that he used to do on old Slim Shady LP and Marshall Mathers LP, but it's like throughout the whole thing. He's basically talking in like he's rapping in like a Borat voice, essentially, and it gets grating and it's like kind of cringy, but it fits in with, like, you know, you had Rivers Cuomo, you know, collabing with Lil Wayne. You had Eminem rapping like Borat. You know what I mean? This is basically the vibe. This is where we were at in 2009, and it was glorious and bizarre. Moving right along, Cobra Starship, Hot Mess. Good Girls Go Bad by Cobra Starship, featuring Leighton Meester, who was on Gossip Girl. I think she was the lead girl. I forget what her name was. Fucking, hold on, I can remember it. Who was like the Gossip Girl? Blair Waldorf? Was that her? And I think that's who Leighton Meester played, right? And she's like the main girl. I'm not super familiar with Gossip Girl, but she, you know, that was a big show. A big TV show in the sort of the latter half of the 2000s decade, and, you know, very of the time. So it was a big deal that Leighton Meester, you know, this was, I think, the first song she was on. I don't even know if she had like a full album of her own at the time. But she teamed up with, you know, a band who were on Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy's label, kind of a, you know, in the grand scheme of things, could be looked at as like a Fall Out Boy offshoot band, Cobra Starship. Their first kind of big song was a song that was on the Snakes on a Plane soundtrack back in '06. That was kind of when they first made their splash in pop culture, but this was their first big radio song, Good Girls Go Bad, featuring Leighton Meester, that wasn't, you know, part of a movie soundtrack or kind of like, you know, on this sort of Fall Out Boy offshoot band under that shadow, you know what I mean? This was their big break into the mainstream, and I mean, it's a great song. It's a banger. Again, very 2009. It's silly. It's jovial. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It was really the perfect time for a band like Cobra Starship to hit with the girl from Gossip Girl, Blair Waldorf herself. Bangin' album too, Hot Mess. This year you also had, and I'm very excited to have this on the list, Skinny Jeans and a Mic by New Boys.
Yeah, I know.
Which is one of my favorite album titles of all time. If I were to make like a solo album, I wish that I would call it Skinny Jeans and a Mic, if that name wasn't already taken, by New Boys. So this was very indicative of where, you know, a lot of rap music was in 2009, because we are about 2 years removed from the original Soulja Boy dance explosion back in 2007. And by the time 2009 had rolled around, you had all these basically little Soulja Boy clones, you know what I mean? You had the G-Spot Boys with, I love that they're called the G-Spot Boys, with Stanky Leg, Dance. You had all these pop rap dance, like ringtone rap songs that all had dances coming out. G-Spot Boys, you had the Teach Me How to Dougie song. There were a bunch of these at the time where, you know, and New Boys, you know, just in my opinion for like 2009, this was maybe the most noteworthy of all of those. They brought the jerk dance, which they didn't invent. That was a dance from back in like the 80s, I believe. You know, and their style looked very like scene kid, skinny jeans and colorful clothing. But what they were actually pulling from was, I believe, like 80s skater, like West Coast 80s skater kind of vibes. They were bringing it back. They brought the jerk dance back on You're a Jerk, which is a very fun song. And this album, Skinny Jeans and a Mic, I gotta say, I'm a big fan of it. It's a lot of fun. If you're in the mood for, and that's why it's on this list, is you know, kind of at this point, we were in the like Soulja Boy, like the ripple effect of Soulja Boy, you know? And you had these artists kind of taking what he laid down and putting their own spin on it. And Skinny Jeans and a Mic by New Boys is, you know, if you've never heard it, I recommend listening to this album if you're ever in the mood for this kind of thing. From there, next up, I mean, you know, we had the Soulja Boy, you know, we were in the Soulja Boy wave, we had the Soulja Boy clones, and we had the man himself, Soulja Boy Tell 'Em, back with his second album, I Soulja Boy Tell 'Em, which is spelled like iPhone, or like iPod, I Soulja Boy Tell 'Em. I think there's an interview where he said the reason why he called the album that is just because, you know, iPhones were hot at the time. The iPhone, I believe, came out in 2007, so everyone had an iPhone, so I Soulja Boy Tell 'Em. That's a very Soulja Boy thought process to name an album that. And his first album was souljaboytellem.com, which is also extremely Soulja Boy, to just promo your website via your album title, and somehow it like represents the music perfectly. I don't know, man. But we had the second Soulja Boy album, and he really outdid himself on this one. Great songs. Kiss Me Through the Phone. You know, just a perfect Soulja Boy track. And, you know, really defines this era well. It's a very, you know, it's like a big arena pop rap song, but it's kind of like arena, like ringtone rap. It takes that, you know, that style, you know, it's got the singing, it like might as well be T-Pain on the chorus. Like it's got that, you know, kind of T-Pain, you know, this is a song for the ladies, kind of like, you know, where R&B was at the time, where like R&B and pop rap had really kind of banded together. I don't know, 678-999-8212. Everyone knew Soulja Boy's phone number because the guy sang it in the song and it was really catchy. And I remember you could call that number and it would be like a pre-recorded message from Soulja Boy. I actually called that number at the time, 876-555-8212, and it was, I'm not even making this up, it was a recording of Soulja Boy, and it scared the shit out of me because it was Soulja Boy, and he was like, hello? I'm like, hello? He's like, hello, who's this? Like, he pretended like he was talking back to you, and then he started laughing. It's like one of those answering machine, like, funny things that where, you know, people pretend to pick up and are like, just kidding, leave a message. It was that, but Soulja Boy. And it scared the shit out of me because I was like 12 or 13, and I literally thought I was talking to Soulja Boy on the phone. Anyways, Soulja Boy, I Soulja Boy Tell 'Em, second album, had a lot of other great songs. Birdwalk, Turn My Swag On. You want to talk about a hit, you know, major hit. Turn My Swag On. Again, perfectly indicative of the fun, goofy era we were in. Moving right along, we're going to talk about one of my least favorite albums, songs, bands, moments of all time. You know, for as much good stuff that came out of 2009, funnily enough, the goofy stuff for me, as kind of offensive to serious, pretentious music people as it was at the time, is, you know, a lot of that is the stuff that I genuinely hold dear and kind of like. It was these types of radio songs that started surfacing at the time that really I just hated back then. I hate now. Next up on the list, we got Train with their album Save Me San Francisco. Now, I know that earlier, you know, Train, I don't know much about Train, okay? I'm not a Train. Train is like my least favorite shit, you know? I know I've been talking a big game lately about how I've gotten into Maroon 5. I made a whole Maroon 5 video. I have not discovered any sort of magic in Train yet. This shit still annoys the fuck out of me. So Train, I know that they had some success before this album with the Drops of Jupiter song. That was a little bit before my time, I think. You know, I wasn't really too aware of that one when I was like in middle school. So this album and Hey Soul Sister was the big single off of this one, was my first introduction to Train. Holy shit, I cannot stand this song. I just want to move on, honestly, because this is just the type of just like corny radio garbage that I just still to this day cannot stand. Like, if you were to ask me what my least favorite song of all time is, I literally would probably be like Hey Soul Sister by Train. Another one would be that Walk the Moon song. And light up the world like nobody else. No. That's fucking One Direction. Oh my god, I was thinking of something completely differently. I like that song. How does that Walk the Moon song go? Shut up and dance with me. That song. Not the One Direction song. I like that song. Just kind of a similar vibe. Similar era. Yeah, Shut Up and Dance. Walk the Moon, you know, fucking Hey Soul Sister, Train. That's my, whatever that genre is, hate it. And unfortunately, we got Hey Soul Sister in 2009. All right, so if you weren't convinced that the 2009 was Goofball City, guess what else we got coming out this year? The debut album from uncle and nephew neon party rock duo, LMFAO. Their debut album, aptly titled Party Rock, was released in 2009. I mean, enough said. Look, I don't really know much about LMFAO, to be honest with you. They were everywhere in 2009, 2010, 2011. I don't know where they came from. I don't know how they formed. I think this first album, you know, I've never really dove into the lore of LMFAO, to be honest with you, but I appreciate them. You know, they were doing kind of a similar swag to New Boys. They had, you know, they were bright and colorful and, you know, pretty neon. I think this album had Shots featuring Lil Jon. And that, like, yellow polka dot bikini song. I don't know. What more do I need to say about LMFAO? This is it right here. And of course, this shit came out in 2009. You want to know a crazy addition to this list? So, not Lil Wayne's rock album Rebirth, because that came out in 2010. But the lead single from that album, the one that got everyone hyped for Lil Wayne's rock album, because, you know, Lil Wayne had been on a big upward trajectory. A couple years prior in 2008, he put out the Carter 3, which was a pretty big album for him. Like, he was starting in 2008, like 2007, 2008. Lil Wayne was everywhere. And, you know, one of the... and he had been in the game for a long time before that. But, you know, he was really, you know, really reaching a commercial peak around then. And, yeah, he kind of surprised everybody and said he was going to make a rock album, which, you know, was a very... a rapper making a rock album was a very new concept at the time. That hadn't really been done before, I don't think. Nowadays, you have a lot of people doing it. MGK. But Lil Wayne, you know, always revolutionary and ahead of the curve, and even kind of counterintuitive at the time, because like I was saying, rock was kind of on its way out in the mainstream world at this time. But like I said, Lil Wayne's actual rock album, Rebirth, did not come out until 2010, but the lead single, Prom Queen, came out in early 2009. And, you know, Lil Wayne's rock album, you know, it's not really that great of an album. I like the song Drop the World, and I do like the song Prom Queen, but as a whole, But Prom Queen, it's a banger. It's really good. Again, it's goofball material. Lil Wayne sounds funny on it. It's a funny song. I loved her fancy underwear. I sat behind her every year. It's a funny song. Lil Wayne doing some funny shit, you know, is very 2009 is basically what I'm saying. Prom Queen. Dude, I would be remiss if I did not include, to help create the vibe of '09, we're stepping into the fall of 2009. I remember this well. There was this girl I used to hang out with when I was in middle school. I was at her house one day, and there was this new... We were watching some music videos on her couch, right? And there was this new singing sensation at the time, this young kid who was just coming out. His name was Justin Bieber. And in like the fall of '09, fucking like the first Justin Bieber single. Like I said, there was this girl I used to hang out with. We were watching music videos one time, and the first time I ever saw Justin Bieber was his video for One Time. Let me tell you one time, girl I love you. Still love that song. It came on the TV, and like, I remember just kind of knowing, like, yeah, this is gonna be, I'm gonna be hearing about this kid for a fucking while. Like, you could just tell that this was some, you know, phenomenon star in the making, and he was this young, like, 14-year-old kid, perfect bowl cut, and, you know, from this point forward, that hair became known as Justin Bieber hair. And of course, in the 2000s, you know, the swoop element of it became the scene hair. But once Justin Bieber came along, it was like, if you know, as far as normies were concerned, any sort of swooped white boy hair was the Justin Bieber hair. But anyways, his first album, My World, came out. To this day, I'm not like I appreciate Justin Bieber. I've never been like a huge like Bieber-holic, you know what I mean? I know like the hits, I know the bigger songs, you know, I like the tunes, but I'm not like, I don't know his entire discography or anything. I've never really dove that deep, but from all of the Justin that I do know and have heard over the years, his first album, My World, I don't know if it's the nostalgia, I don't know if it's just because it hit me. It didn't even really hit me at the time, but it just like the you know, the moment in culture that I got to witness in middle school of Justin Bieber becoming a phenomenon, like, sticks out to me. But My World, his first album. Oh, sorry, my cat wants to get out. Hold on, I gotta stand up real quick. Who's a pretty girl? Let me get you. You want to get out? You want to go out there? You want to go out there? Anyway, basically the point that I was trying to get to is My World is my favorite Justin Bieber album. Hands down, my favorite Biebs era. One Time, great song. This one has One Less Lonely Girl. Awesome track. Another one of his first big singles. A deeper cut on this album, my personal favorite, is track 2, Favorite Girl. You cannot go wrong with some Favorite Girl by J. Biebs. But yeah, his swag hit the scene in late '09, and, you know, just like total, just suburban teenage white boy swag. Oh, another big moment, kind of on the, you know, similar to Justin Bieber, but we got Miley Cyrus with Party in the USA. So this was kind of her first big moment as, like, Miley Cyrus. Kinda. Well, you know, because she first came out as Hannah Montana, and Hannah Montana had, like, albums that were, like, it wasn't, like, Miley Cyrus solo. It was, like, Hannah Montana soundtrack, essentially. And this was, like, '07, '08. But '08, Miley actually did have her first album, Breakout, or Breakthrough. It had the 7 Things I Hate About You. You're insecure. You like me. You like her. Yeah, so I guess that was kind of her first. But, you know, so that was like the, you know, Miley Cyrus is coming out. But in '09, we got Party in the USA, which is like, I'm not even playing with you guys. Like, I don't think a pop song can get more perfectly written than Party in the USA by Miley. It could have been sung by anybody. It's just like the songwriting, the pop songwriting displayed here is like picture perfect. And this song was a huge moment for Miley. You know, this was bigger than 7 Things I Hate About You, and definitely like a bigger song worldwide and amongst much, you know, a much greater demographic. Like, it had a much farther reach than anything she had done before as solo or as Hannah Montana. It wasn't just like young, like, girls or whatever who were listening to it. Like, this is like a real, like, pop hit that I feel like kind of propelled Miley as a solo singer to, like, fucking superstardom if she wasn't there already. This song, you know, huge moment for Miley, and the song was everywhere, all over the radio. All right, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I'm sure you kind of understand the vibe that was going on in this period already. And it's a very hot day where I am in Boston, Massachusetts right now, so I'm like getting sweaty. My hair is turning into like mashed potatoes. So yeah, let's just finish out my list. I'll kind of rapid fire the rest of these just to complete the vibe, the 2009 musical vibe that I'm trying to paint out here for you. So we got Asher Roth, Asleep in the Bread Aisle. A funny relic. I've never heard this album all the way through. I only know the one big song he had, kind of a frat boy, like a, you know, a douchey yet wholesome frat boy anthem called I Love College.
That party last night was awfully crazy. I wish we taped it. I danced my ass off and had this one girl completely naked.
I mean, I don't even really like this song very much. I would never, like, put it on, but it definitely had a moment. And it definitely, Asher Roth, like, got pretty big off of this one song. And you know, I remember thinking the album title and the cover, Asleep at the Bread Aisle, was pretty funny. Turned into kind of a one-hit wonder situation, though. He never really followed this up. I've heard from friends of mine who know a little bit more about his trajectory that later he went on to do more like psychedelic rap kind of stuff. Apparently his later stuff is pretty good. I don't know. I've never checked it out. But yeah, I Love College. I mean, not a song that I particularly enjoy, but one that definitely helped define this era for sure. And helped, you know, kind of become a benchmark for like white frat bro, like college rappers after him, like Lil Dicky or I don't know, sorta Mac Miller. Mac Miller was way better, but you know, just that vibe of like, I'm in college and I smoke weed. All right, Lady Gaga, the fame monster. Need I say more? You know, she came out swinging in '08 with the Fame, and you know, that album was fucking awesome. We got Paparazzi off of that, Just Dance. I mean, she had solidified herself enough in the mainstream pop world with that one. But that album was a little bit more, a little bit more of like, you know, she already had her Lady Gaga vibe going on, but that album was a little bit more straightforward pop, feel good, like club bangers. The Fame monster is when like the Lady Gaga, like, this is when she became fucking the next level Lady Gaga. Like, just the beast came out of her, and, you know, it became way more theatrical, way more like, you know, almost like Michael Jackson level, just production and craziness and big epic songs and crazy outfits. You know, songs like Alejandro, Bad Romance. You know, she got more experimental and like really pulled it off really well, and just made, you know, just fucking, you know, one of the greatest pieces of pop music ever I'll just go out on a limb and say that, the Fame Monster. And that leads me to the next one on my list, Owl City, fucking Fireflies.
Would not believe your eyes if 10 million fireflies.
This song was so big that, like, this song was fucking annoying when it came out. I like Owl City, and, like, this dude comes from, you know, the ilk of the scene kid, right? This guy was like a MySpace DIY artist before this. He had a release called Of June, which had my personal favorite Owl City song on it. Hello, Seattle, I am a mountaineer. And then he put out, I think he got signed to a fucking major label and put out his big commercial debut album in 2009. And I've never, you know, Owl City is one of those artists that, like, technically I should really like. It has all the elements of, like, shit that I like, but I don't know, I've never really been a huge Owl City guy outside of, like, a few songs, like Hello Seattle. And Fireflies, you know, so big that, you know, to me, this song was just like, it was inescapable in 2009, and it was, like, annoying. Like, it was to the point, it was like High Hopes by Panic at the Disco now. How that song is just so overblown and overplayed, it's just everywhere. That was, like, Fireflies by Owl City. But, again, like, I love the idea of Owl City, maybe more so than actually, like, sitting down and listening to Owl City. We had Boys Like Girls they put out their sophomore album, Love Drunk. That was a huge hit. We had Sean Kingston coming back around with Shoddy Fire Burning on the Dance Floor. Whoa. Kid Cudi, Man on the Moon. My stoners out there, this was a game changer.
Day and night, oh, I toss and turn, I keep stressing my mind.
A vibe elevator in rap music. You know, Kanye West at the time, 808s and Heartbreak, that was in 2008. Otherwise it would be on this list. You know, expanding rap in the 2000s to, you know, we were getting, by 2009 it wasn't like the, you know, in the earlier half of the decade, we still, you know, gangster rap was still really big. We had 50 Cent, G-Unit, The Game, you know, all that type of, you know, rap was, you know, still it was very flashy and, you know, just fucking whatever. But it started getting really, you know, rap got more cerebral and more, you know, like arty towards the end of the decade, helped, you know, in the mainstream a lot by Kanye West and eventually Kid Cudi, even pushing it further here on the classic Man on the Moon. And the last album that I'll throw out here before I get out of your hair and take a cold shower, Selena Gomez and The Scene, Kiss and Tell. Does anyone remember this? You remember this. Come on. I feel like this doesn't get talked about enough or remembered on, or remembered about as much as I would like this to be. Selena Gomez had a band, I guess. It was kind of like her solo, but it was like, you know, she had kind of a pop rock. She had like a pop rock project, Selena Gomez and The Scene. And they actually made at least one or two more albums after this, but the first one came out in 2009, Selena Gomez and The Scene. I definitely, you know, I really love the aesthetic of this. And, you know, the whole project and album and everything. And I remember, like, I listened to this album at the time. I liked the vibe of it a lot. I don't really remember a whole lot of the music from it. I don't think it's, you know, so obviously, at least for me, personally speaking, not a very memorable album necessarily, but one that was very, you know, indicative, a good representation of this time period for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I've always thought Selena Gomez and The Scene was legit. So anyways, you know, that was the video. Like I said, it's really hot. I don't really have many closing thoughts, but 2009 was a vibe. And I love you, and I thank you for watching. And as we enter the summer months here, I will catch you again in the future for some more hot and cozy hot and sweaty Cozy Representative Productions. And I hope I reminded you of some bangers. And, you know, I hope I mapped out what the goofball vibe was in 2009 in mainstream pop culture in the music world the best way that I could. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time right here on the Cozy Representative. Love you. Peace out.